and for the world, it's just it's it represents a point where because of things that are not fair, tragedy happens.
The strings soften, creating space for the flute's airy, inquisitive melody. Light harvest dance in the background. Rum gently joins in, adding warmth and depth. The strings soften, creating space for the flute's airly, inquisitive melody. Light harps dance in the breath.
In the heart of eastern New Mexico, where El Rio Pecos curves through dry llano and the wind hums its old canción, stands Bosque Redondo near Fort Sumner. Today, it feels calm. The alamos shake, the dust drifts easy, but underneath that stillness lives a memory of pain, resistencia, and survival. This is sacred ground, where two proud nations, the Diné or Navajo and the Inde or Mescalero Apache, were forced to live side by side in captivity, once enemies, now bound by the same sorrow.
Here we are standing here at the front entrance of Bosque Redondo Memorial, and we're talking about the history of why this place is in existence, why it came to be, who it affected, and how it has changed over the years.
The Bosque Redondo is at Fort Sumner, New Mexico, and the Bosque Redondo was originally approximately 1 million acres of very isolated and arid land that was set aside as the Bosque Redondo Indian Reservation.
Back in the 1860s, this wasn't home. It was a prison made of adobe and grief. The United States government, under General Carleton, with Kit Carson executing orders.
During the 1860s, the government decided that they were going to have a Scorched Earth campaign with the Navajo, and they were going to put them into reservation. And so Kit Carson was asked to fulfill that directive.
A campaign to bring the Navajo and the Mescalero Apache to the Bosque Redondo, and they were kept there. The Mescalero Apache were the first to be subdued. Colonel Kit Carson actually played a big role in both the subjugation of the Mescalero Apache, who were a nomadic group of people, more than sedentary, and sending them to the Bosque Redondo.
With Kit Carson executing orders set out to pacify El Suroeste. What followed became known as the Long Walk. Cientos de millas across the desert, hunger-biting, cold nights, endless. Thousands of Dene abuelos, mujeres, and niños were taken from their sacred homelands and marched to Fort Sumner. It was a journey of suffering and spirit, one that changed New Mexico forever. These people were marched from what we now know of as the Navajo Reservation all the way across New Mexico during a very harsh winter.
The Bosque Redondo Memorial is a very profound memorial that tells a story that for a very long time has not been told accurately, that has not been acknowledged in that appropriate manner of history. There's always the colonized version of history, which easily omits or easily tries to gloss over the very painful and traumatic experiences that Native people endured.
Walking mile after mile, with the soles of your feet bleeding, the sun unforgiving, and the cold cutting through your bones, carrying your babies, your elders, your last hope. Soldiers on horseback yelling, "Move, move!" with rifles raised. Many fell, never to rise again. Those who reached Bosque Redondo arrived exhausted, half alive, holding on to faith and onto each other.
And then taken to the place called Fort Sumner up in northern New Mexico, east portion of New Mexico. And they stayed there for about 4 years until November 3rd, 1865 is when they made their escape from Fort Sumner, and in that escape we have our oral stories that were told about. There were 9 men that were left behind who was responsible for keeping the fires going. So when the soldiers looked out, they thought that everybody was still in their tents, their camps. They thought everybody was there. Come daybreak, they come to realize what had actually happened. They found out the 9 men who had stayed were keeping the fires going while everybody else escaped throughout the night. And those groups, they didn't all go in one large group, they all scattered. And the reason being was that they had said that in case one group gets caught, at least they still have a chance for another group to make it.
A lot of what was happening in the 1860s is people were moving from the east to the west, whether it be in quest for the gold rush or this quest for land mass, but that land was already occupied by someone else, and there was pushback from the people who were there. And the people I am referring to are the Dene, or the Navajo Nation, or the Ende people, who were the Mescalero Apache tribe. So during that time, you have this big pushback from those groups of people. They were pretty much right up against one another as far as their land masses are concerned. And when the military started occupying this territory as a result of the American Civil War, a lot of people were coming from California. And by the time they had arrived in this territory, with the pushback of the Battle of Glorieta Pass, there was nothing for them to do. So the general in command, this General James H. Carleton, turned his attention to what he referred to as the Indian problem.
When the Dene arrived, they found the Mescalero Apache already there. Two tribes that once fought for territory now faced the same enemigo. The land was harsh, sandy soil, bitter water from the Pecos, and winds that never rested. The Army called it a model reservation, but it was nothing more than an experiment in control, trying to break the body and the will of two proud peoples. Today, the Bosque Redondo Memorial stands on that same ground, a living monument to resilience. Its adobe walls echo the hands that once shaped them in captivity. The museum isn't just exhibits and glass cases. It's a space of memoria, respeto, and truth. It tells the story of survival, not to reopen old wounds, but to teach healing through remembrance.
This place is necessary to remind the world in order for not only this country, but for the world in general to move forward. And the great work being done here as a memorial speaks to that continued work. And as a member of the Navajo Nation, I'm immensely grateful to those who day in and day out speak to that work here at Bosque Redondo.
Percussion grows bolder with a steady beat up this foreign melody. French horn gently joins.
So the Bosque Redondo Memorial is in a real small town in a rural place in New Mexico. The town is called Fort Sumner, which that's the fort that the Navajo people were imprisoned at. It's called Fort Sumner. And I just want, people to know that in this beautiful little New Mexico community, there's a gem of a museum. I've been to a lot of museums throughout my career, and that Bosque Redondo Memorial, that museum and memorial, it is one of the best in the country.
The strings soften, creating space for the flute's airy, inquisitive melody. Light harvest ends in the background.
When we first started the planning process of the exhibition, we knew that it was going to be a difficult subject. And so the International Coalition of Sites of Conscience, which we're a part of now, and there's just a little bit over 100 locations in the world that is in this coalition. Anyhow, we contacted them and they offered us the services of a mediator to facilitate meetings between the Mescalero Apache, Navajo, and stakeholders of the state and locally. So we went through about 7 years off and on of mediation. There was a lot of hard feelings between a lot of the stakeholders. And we had to have some very truthful, hard discussions about what the history should look like and what should be said. And I remember in one of the meetings that we could hear some weeping and wailing coming from across the room. And as we looked to the corner of the room, we could see two women embracing each other, and they were crying over each other's shoulders. And come to find out, one of the ladies was the ancestor of a soldier who was stationed here at the Bosque Redondo, and the other was the ancestor of a person a Navajo person who was interned here. And they had made peace with each other. And so the process of healing was a long one. We're still going through it. There's several people, there's several families who say they cannot come here. But then there's many are saying that they have to come here now because they have to open that part of their history.
So, despite these episodes of atrocity, the people are still here, and that's one of the things that this exhibit tries to correct. The past exhibits that we've had in the space that tried to talk about what happened here at Bosque Redondo, many people left believing that the Dene and the Ende people died and did not return. So we wanted people to know that the people did return back to Navajo Nation. The people did return back home to Mescalero. And the people actually began to thrive once again and grow to the large tribal nations that they are today.
Still, they refused to give up. The Dene and the Inde looked at each other and saw the same pain, the same hunger, the same prayers whispered to the wind, and enemies became hermanos, sharing stories, songs, and the stubborn will to live. Out of captivity came something powerful, unity born from shared suffering, strength built from survival.
Just because of that, we remember what it was about. However, it's something that we don't really want to remember because of us being forcibly taken there and with the treatment and having to pretty much fend for ourselves in learning agricultural ways and things like that.
I'm Dr. Waldo from Eastern New Mexico University in Portales. And today we are here in Fort Sumner at the Bosque Redondo Memorial Site. Students have come with me today to get a bit of glimpse into what it was like. Well, we'll never know what it was exactly like, but for the Navajo and the Mescalero Apache, when they were driven and then confined to what was supposed to become the Bosque Redondo Indian Reservation.
Out here I have coffee. Luckily it has been roasted for us. So just find a smooth surface. I'm going to grind it out. It comes with the ration that was given to us, and you would have to feed on this for about 4 to 5 days.
So the goal of these programs, it's not that we're trying to role play the experiences of the people, but more so a lot of people have never cooked over a fire. They're unfamiliar with the kinds of foods that would have been available in small amounts here. They may have never made adobe bricks. They might have never had to build a shelter. And so there's aspects of those hardships that can't even be imagined if nobody's even done the simple version of these in ideal conditions.
What we've done already is try and make food from rations and just do the best we can with what we were given without any instructions on how to prepare it.
But we're hoping that students, by doing these activities, they can learn about this history in a different and new way, and it can help them reflect on the experiences of the Native peoples that were held captive here and what those experiences might have been like during that time under these very difficult, very awful conditions.
We are going to be making some adobe bricks, which I find to be a lot of fun, but when you think about having to do this task for day in and day out for 12 hours a day in all kinds of weather, it suddenly isn't that much fun.
Another activity is building shelters. That's because the people weren't able to build the traditional homes here. There were not the materials for it. So they had to make do with whatever materials were available. And so we have the students learn about that part of the history.
They burned my finger on one of the pots and had to scavenge some wood. And yeah, my food didn't turn out quite as the way I thought it might.
The way they would have built their shelters back then, from the records we have where they've described in great detail, is they would have dug a hole about a foot and a half deep. And then they would have laid the brush over that to pull it in. And then they probably would have like put mud or dirt around that to kind of make it weatherproof. There's also talk of them using like hides or woven blankets to like, make it more solid. A Scorched Earth campaign is where you essentially try to destroy all of the resources to make it impossible for anybody to survive. So traditional warfare, it's the soldiers versus the soldiers, typically. This Scorched Earth warfare is really about targeting the civilian population. So the way Kit Carson approached this is he burned crops, he slaughtered livestock, he leveled homes. If he found ceramic pots, things like that, any personal belongings would be broken and destroyed. They would even throw the dead livestock into the water sources to make the water undrinkable. And so it was really about making the conditions so bad, especially the hunger so bad, that it was either die or surrender.
They made us walk the prairie, dust in our bones, sun like a verdict, wine like a stone. From the mazes of our mothers, they took our name and led 9,000 feet into a broken place. Scorched earth under heaven, cold iron and chain. Fort Sumner sky remembers every last name. They thought they buried the stories, burn the land away. But songs like the Pecos River always find a way. Broken Arrow, Mascalero, and the Navajo will never go away. I said we will never go away. Broken Arrow, Mascalero, and the Navajo will never go away. I said we will never go away.
Carson was told to use any means necessary to bring these people in. They did not know how many people were in this tribe at that time. It was estimated that maybe there was 3,000 people at best. And once these marches, these forced marches taking place, also known as the Long Walk, there were 53 different forced marches that took place from 1863 through 1866.
In the cottonwood, ashes in spring. Children with empty hands still clinging to kin. Apache and Navajo, side by side they stood, counting the footsteps, dreaming of food. Scorched earth under heaven, cold iron and chain. For Sumner sky remembers every last name. They thought they buried the stories, burn the land away. But songs like the Pecos River always finds a way. Long walk behind them, a trail of bones and fear. But the horizon kept a promise, a home somewhere near. You can cage the body, you can silence the drum, but the heart keeps a map to where the Pecos River runs. And grandmother's whisper cedar, grandfather's name the stars. They stitched the old languages into small secret scars. When the soldiers left and the tents went down, they walked back to the mountains to claim their ground. Scorched earth under heaven,
Este lugar también es nuestro espejo. It reminds us of the cost of silence, the danger of forgetting, and the power of telling our own stories. Bosque Redondo teaches us that healing begins with truth, and truth begins with memory. We walk this same tierra, carrying both its pain and its pride. At the end of it all, Bosque Redondo isn't just about tragedy, it's about transformation. From forced marches came faith. From division came unity. This land, once filled with suffering, now breathes esperanza. It stands as proof that even from the hardest ground, the human soul, firme, valiente, and proud, can rise again, carrying the story forward, sin miedo,